On March 18, 1925, the tri-state tornado tore across Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana, beginning one of the most violent and catastrophic tornado disasters in American history. Moving with extraordinary speed, the enormous circulation crossed communities, farms, schools, factories, and entire neighborhoods, before finally disappearing nearly 3.5 hours later. By the time the disaster was over, hundreds of people had lost their lives, with thousands injured and thousands of homes destroyed. This is the story of the most violent tornado ever recorded in America. In 1925, life across the rural Midwest looked very different from today. Small farming communities and mining towns were scattered across the countryside. Automobiles shared roads with trains and horse-drawn wagons, and families often lived within walking distance of schools, churches, and local businesses. There was no Doppler radar, smartphone alert, or modern tornado warning system capable of tracking a storm minute by minute. The morning of March 18th was dark and rainy across parts of the region, with weather conditions that would eventually produce a powerful storm system. By early afternoon, a severe thunderstorm was developing over Missouri, but there was little reason for most residents to understand just how extraordinary the afternoon would become. At approximately 1:01 p.m., the tornado touched down northwest of Ellington, Missouri, traditionally marking the beginning of the historic tri-state tornado's path. A farmer was killed near the beginning of the track as the tornado accelerated northeastward through rural communities and mining areas. The tornado continued toward Annapolis and Leadanna, where 2 more people were killed, and extensive damage was reported. It then crossed farmland in Bollinger County, where 2 schools were struck and 32 children were injured, before continuing toward the Mississippi River. By approximately 2:30 p.m., the tornado crossed into southern Illinois and reached Gorham, where the destruction suddenly became catastrophic. The community was essentially demolished, with 34 people killed, and the tornado continued northeastward toward the larger city of Murphysboro. Murphysboro was a thriving coal and railroad community of roughly 10,000 people, but within minutes, entire neighborhoods were being torn apart as the tornado carved a path nearly a mile wide through the city. Homes disappeared, trees were stripped, vehicles were thrown across streets, and buildings that had stood for years were reduced to rubble. The tornado struck Longfellow School, where 17 children were killed, before continuing toward Logan School, where another 9 children lost their lives. 3 students were also killed when the upper portion of Murphysboro Township High School collapsed, turning ordinary classrooms into scenes of devastation. The destruction continued at the Mobile and Ohio Railroad shops, where approximately 500 workers were inside when the tornado struck. The buildings were severely damaged and later caught fire, and 35 workers were killed, adding another devastating chapter to the destruction across Murphysboro. Even after the tornado moved away, the danger continued as fires spread through portions of the wreckage, while broken water mains made firefighting extremely difficult. At the Blue Front Hotel, flames consumed the damaged building, and 13 people died, demonstrating that the disaster continued long after the tornado itself had passed. The tornado continued northeast toward DeSoto, where another community was devastated, and 33 children were killed when the DeSoto school collapsed. Homes, businesses, churches, and other buildings throughout the town were also heavily damaged or destroyed. From DeSoto, the tornado continued toward Hurst Bush and West Frankfort, crossing more communities while maintaining its extraordinary speed and destructive power. Hundreds of people had already been killed across Illinois, yet the destruction continued across rural farmland toward the next towns in its path. Around 3:10 p.m., the tornado reached West Frankfort, a major coal mining community where the storm devastated homes, businesses, and industrial facilities. More than 1,500 miners were underground at the time, allowing many to survive the tornado itself. But above ground, the storm destroyed hundreds of their homes and left families facing an unimaginable scene when the miners returned. 7 miles farther along the path, the tornado struck Parrish, where approximately 30 of the town's 34 houses were destroyed, and almost every other building suffered damage. The storm then continued across rural Hamilton and White counties, destroying farms and homes while the death toll continued rising. After devastating more than 100 miles of Missouri and Illinois, the tornado crossed the Wabash River and entered Indiana, continuing toward Griffin. The community was devastated. Approximately 150 homes were destroyed, and at least 2 children were killed while returning home from school. The tornado then moved through rural areas northwest of Owensville, where approximately 85 farms were devastated, before reaching Princeton, Indiana. About half of Princeton was destroyed, including homes, businesses, railroad facilities, and the H.J. Heinz factory, with damage estimated at approximately $1.8 million in 1925. At approximately 4:30 p.m., the tornado finally dissipated near the Princeton area after what historical records described as roughly 3.5 hours of continuous devastation. Its traditionally accepted path stretched approximately 219 miles, crossed 3 states and 13 counties, and averaged roughly 3/4 of a mile in width, with some reports describing an even wider circulation. The destruction was now complete, but the human stories were only beginning to emerge. Across the 3 states, 695 people had been killed and 2,027 injured, while approximately 15,000 homes were destroyed, leaving thousands without shelter and forcing communities to begin rescue and recovery almost immediately. In Murphysboro, the final death toll reached 234 people, the highest number of tornado fatalities ever recorded in a single American community. Survivors returned to neighborhoods where entire rows of homes had disappeared, while rescue workers searched through debris for people who might still be alive beneath collapsed buildings. One survivor was Wilma Theiss Kimmel, who was 17 years old when the tornado struck Murphysboro. Decades later, she recorded her memories of that afternoon, providing a rare first-person account of experiencing the disaster as a teenager and living with its consequences for the rest of her life. The tragedy at the schools was especially painful for families across southern Illinois. At Longfellow and Logan schools in Murphysboro, children who had entered their classrooms for an ordinary school day never returned home, while in DeSoto, 33 children were killed at the school, creating one of the deadliest school disasters ever associated with a tornado. Another haunting story came from DeSoto Deputy Sheriff George Boland, who was on patrol when the tornado struck. The circulation lifted him into the storm, and his body was never recovered, leaving his family and community without the certainty of knowing exactly what happened to him. In West Frankfort, thousands of miners had survived underground, while the tornado destroyed much of the world waiting for them above. When the disaster was over, many families were left without homes, and the men returning from the mines faced the heartbreaking reality that the neighborhoods they had left earlier that day had been transformed. Across the damaged communities, churches, schools, businesses, railroad facilities, and homes became temporary rescue sites as residents searched for loved ones and volunteers began clearing debris. Recovery would take months, and in some places, entire sections of communities would never return to the way they had looked before March 18th. The tri-state tornado was later classified F5, the highest category on the original Fujita scale, although the Fujita scale did not yet exist when the tornado occurred. The classification was assigned retrospectively based on the extraordinary damage documented along the path, while the historical damage total reached approximately $16.5 million in 1925 dollars. For decades, the tri-state tornado was remembered as a single tornado that remained on the ground for 219 miles. But modern researchers have revisited that assumption by examining historical newspapers, photographs, damage reports, and eyewitness accounts. Their work found breaks near portions of the beginning and end of the damage path, meaning scientists cannot conclusively prove that one continuous tornado remained on the ground for the entire 219 miles. The reanalysis still found strong evidence that most of the destruction came from one extraordinarily long-lived supercell, with a possible continuous damage path of at least 219 miles and a 174-mile section considered likely continuous. Whether the entire historic path came from one tornado or a sequence produced by the same supercell, the scale of the disaster itself remains undisputed. The tri-state tornado remains the deadliest tornado in American history, killing 695 people and injuring more than 2,000. Nearly a century later, the photographs of the ruins and the memories preserved by survivors still reveal the extraordinary human cost of that afternoon. What makes the story so haunting is that there is no known photograph of the actual tornado itself. What remains are photographs of what came afterward: collapsed schools, destroyed homes, ruined factories, railroad wreckage, families standing beside the foundations of their houses, and communities trying to understand how so much could disappear in a matter of hours. On March 18, 1925, the tri-state tornado moved across America with a speed and violence that few people could comprehend, leaving hundreds of families grieving and entire communities permanently changed. The tornado eventually disappeared, but the memories of those it touched remained, turning one terrible afternoon into a chapter of American history that has never been forgotten. Thank you for watching EpicWildSphere. If you enjoyed this documentary, consider subscribing for more in-depth stories exploring history's most powerful tornadoes and the people whose lives were changed by them. And until next time, stay safe, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next documentary.